Goodness, well, I think a proper history would take a very long time to go into, but let's look at a few snapshots from recent years, the past year or two. And again, imagine that you're seeing this through the eyes of a Jewish student. You're 19, 18 years old, just come up to university. The NUS, National Union of Students, in March, to its annual conference, invited a rapper called Low-Key to perform. Now, Low-Key, I don't know if viewers have heard of him, but he's well known for his hard-left Corbynite views, and in particular his very virulent anti-Zionism, which many have criticised as tipping over into anti-Semitism. And look at his lyrics of his songs, talk about the Zionist lobby and things like that. So he was supposed to give a performance at the NUS's conference. Now, it says a lot about the culture of an organisation by which someone like that will be asked to perform. So Jewish students complained about him being asked to perform, and they were told, you know what, we've got this safe space which is being used for autistic students and students who can't take a lot of stimulation. Why don't you go over there for Loki's concert? So basically being asked to self-segregate. So that's one example. Another example, there was a chap called David Miller, who was a professor at Bristol University, teaching in sociology many anti-Israel theories, shall we say, about the reach of Israel supposedly into British society. He was sacked, but he, in an email to the Jewish Chronicle, accused Jewish students of being pawns of Israel, pawns of what he called a violent, regime of ethnic cleansing. And then the last thing is the election of the new president that you mentioned earlier. She has made a lot of tweets which people have criticised as being intensely anti-Semitic, including calling a Muslim anti-Hamas preacher a dirty Zionist, including citing this Muslim war cry, Kaiba Kaiba al-Yahud, which evokes a 7th century massacre of Jews. And including praising very controversial Muslim cleric who's called for God to kill the Jews. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a whole culture that dominates the NUS and campuses as a whole up and down this country.
OK, Jake, what I want to know from you then, we're clear now on why that's happened with the NUS and why the government have made this decision. But it strikes me that there's a strain of anti-Semitism that has ran through the left for goodness only knows how long, much longer than I've been on this planet, put it that way. And it seems to me to get away with it in ways in which other forms of virulent racism simply wouldn't be allowed to get away with it. And I want to know why. Why is that?
Well, I think there's a couple of sleights of hand that take place in this process. The first thing is that they, repackage anti-Semitism as what's known as anti-Zionism. The late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of Britain, said that in the past, during the medieval times, Jews were hated for their religion, Christ killers or whatever. During the 20th century, they were hated for their race, Hitler and so forth. But these days, they're hated for their nation state. And so this same hatred has mutated, but there's some sleights of hand that have come into it in the last, few decades. And one is that people can say, I just have problems with Israel, not with Jews. I'm an anti-Zionist, so I'm free to now obsess about Israel's, every sort of, every small indiscretion that Israel commits. I can obsess about that. I can magnify it. I can accuse it of crimes it never committed. But that's okay. I'm only anti-Zionist. And the other thing that happens as well is that the whole thing is packaged up in a kind of social justice presentation. So what people on the hard left in particular, the way they present themselves is that they are standing up for the underdog. They're fighting back against colonialism, against white oppression, and so on and so forth. And Israel is bundled into that and represented as if they are the good guys rather than the anti-Semites.